Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And we're about 2 months into the 2026 season, the Rescue going a bit better than a year ago when we took over this team in mid-May. 24-30 record, certainly not impressive, but we did have a winning record in the month of May after a poor start in April. And we're not in last place, and we don't have the worst record in baseball. So although we didn't expect to be contenders quite yet, and certainly will not be looking to be buyers of older veteran talent as we get closer to the trade deadline, it's good to see a little bit of progress on the field with this team. Hopefully we can continue building up some credibility with ownership, building up some credibility with the fans, and ultimately getting a larger budget for this team going forward, which is going to be critical if we're ever going to get to some level of a success here in Colorado. And we're going to start off this episode before we get moving through the month of June towards our mid-season review, and then ultimately preparing for our upcoming fifth pick in the draft by focusing on a couple of things that Gilbert Gonzalez has brought up in recent episodes. We typically do a relatively deep dive on our farm system at the end of every season. Gilbert asked if we could do a look at how some of the players are doing in the early stages of the season more regularly, including checking in on some of the high school draftees that we had from last year who have just recently started their first season of professional baseball, since we are following what the default schedules are now, where most of the high school players who are going to be going to rookie ball don't begin their professional careers until they wait 10 or so months till the next rookie seasons start. We talked about Jamie Arnold in the recent tutorial video we put together, so we won't belabor him for those of you who watched that. But he was our fourth overall pick a year ago, 3-3 with a 3.47 ERA and high A ball, and we did just promote the number 18 prospect in baseball to Double A. Definitely does not have as high a ceiling as we thought when we were in the process of drafting him, but still think he can hopefully develop into a good major league player. We did have a successful trip through the development with Lab with him this past offseason, working on his pitch control, and hopefully can continue moving forward with him. In Double A, he joins Charlie Condon, who's actually on the IL with a strained ab muscle for another several days. Condon, 267 average, 6 homers and 14 ribbies. The 23-year-old still looks like he could have a pretty interesting major league bat. We've been playing him at first and third over the last season since we took over. Back now in kind of one of his natural outfield spots, but wanted to hopefully make him as versatile defensively as he could be for his eventual debut in the major leagues, which, if I had to guess, will probably happen sometime in 2027. Francisco Santos was our IAFA signing this year. Just turned 17 years old. The number 52 prospect in baseball is still at our international complex. Still, at least according to our scout, looks like a very high potential, useful player if we can get him to reach his full potential. Recently promoted Braden Nett, who we had picked up right when we were starting this playthrough a year ago in a trade with the Padres, and he had a very rough first major league outing. 5 hits allowed, including a home run, and 3 earned runs allowed over just 1 inning pitched in relief. So he's got a 27 ERA, a 5 whip. I'm actually somewhat surprised that giving up 3 runs and 5 hits in 1 inning is only 1/10 a win below replacement. But hopefully there's nowhere to go but up for Mr. Net. He could eventually get an opportunity to start with us later this year if we have some injuries or we perhaps trade away a veteran pitcher or two as we get closer to the trade deadline. But he's going to ultimately have to earn that right, and certainly his first outing at the major league level was not particularly impressive. Jack Bauer, pitcher we picked in the second round, also known as 24, 1-3 with a sickly 13.06 ERA, making his professional debut in rookie ball. He has walked a ridiculous 23 batters in just 20 2/3 innings. His whip is 2.66. Somehow that's slightly above replacement level, but certainly need to see some hopefully improvement from Jack Bauer over the second half of the rookie league season. Hopefully we can get another 6 or 7 starts out of him this year. Jared Cerna, Rule 5 acquisition, who looks like he could be a useful infield piece for us. Trying to make sure that we maintain his rights, so we're keeping him on the major league roster. He has not been good, hitting below 266 at-bats, but very sporadic playing time for the 24-year-old who celebrating his birthday today. So happy birthday, Jared Cerna. The last top 200 prospect in our organization is Benny Montgomery, another guy who's in Double-A. Looks like, and you can see we're starting to play him at first base just for defensive versatility. He is actually potentially an outstanding defensive outfielder, so unlikely that we'll play him much at first base. Those ratings aren't great, but he is 6'5", so we figured in the interest of just giving ourselves as many mix and match options as possible, try to train him up on first base. Like the outfield defense, like the speed, I think the question with Montgomery, who's almost 24 years old, is what the bat ultimately becomes. He's hitting just .215 with 5 homers and 17 ribbies in 163 at-bats for Double-A Hartford. So definitely question, whether he really becomes an impact major leaguer or is just a guy who is a 4th or 5th outfielder for a few years and likely prices himself out of the league as he starts getting more expensive and out of his minimum priced years. 2 final prospects we're going to check on who aren't among the top 200 are guys we drafted last year. One is Brock Kettleson, potential two-way player. You can see he's pitched just 1 game in rookie ball out of the bullpen. We're focusing more on his batting, given that we like his defense, we like his speed, and we are very concerned about his potential proclivity to give up home runs. But he did fine in the 1 outing he's had in a reliever. He'll probably continue to get a little bit of action there. As a hitter, he's batting .200 with 2 homers and 15 ribbies and 75 at-bats, so he's been below replacement level and only a 39 WRC plus. But for an 18-year-old, he's, I don't want to say holding his own, but he's at least showing enough flashes that he's going to continue to get regular playing time, at least over the course of this season. And then our 3rd round pick from a year ago, Slater DeBruin, another guy with good defensive capabilities, very good speed. Doesn't look like the high end of the bat is what we had hoped. Again, we're only high scouting accuracy on him, not very high. And it's a different scout evaluating him now than the scout that we had who drafted him. But doesn't seem like the contact and gap power are going to be quite as high as we had hoped. We had thought he was a 75 contact guy and a 65 overall potential guy back when we were thinking about bringing him on board. But still think he could be useful, and he is off to a really good start with his professional career, hitting .316 in 79 at-bats. He's stolen 7 bases, above average offensively, and a win above replacement. So DeBruin off to a solid start in his career. Hopefully he can still develop into a useful outfielder for us in 4 or 5 seasons. And the other thing I want to react to that Gilbert Gonzalez mentioned was possibly considering to sign Bobby Miller, who we picked up as a Rule 5 acquisition to an extension. You can see the potential arbitration numbers for Miller aren't that daunting, but he's off to a respectable start with us. 3.81 ERA over 28 and a third innings pitched. We did just move him into the rotation because we've had a couple of injuries there recently. And in the one start that he had for us, did a decent job. Allowed a couple of earned runs over 5 and a third innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 walks, struck out 7. The issue is that 2 of the 4 hits were home runs, but still not a bad initial outing. And he's not looking for crazy money, given his arbitration outlook and the fact that he was just not even on a 40-man roster and available in the Rule 5 draft. If he reaches his full potential, I think he's a real bargain. The issue is he's 27 years old, and I don't think a 27-year-old who has all of the opportunities to growth towards his ceiling that we see with Miller is ever going to really reach those. But looking at what he's done for us this year, and if we assume that maybe we get a portion of the potential growth that we think can happen to some of his ratings, I still could see him a few years from now being a pretty useful back of the rotation starter for us, or even worse, bullpen guy, and at the money he's looking for, I think it makes sense to try to lock him up. So we have made an offer to him. He was looking for about $21 million over 7 years. We offered him just under 19 over 7 years, which will buy out those 4 arbitration seasons plus 3 potential free agent years. So I don't think this is going to be a revolutionary move for us one way or the other, but could be an opportunity to at least lock up a good solid pitcher who, if we get real lucky with some rolls of the dice, could become more than just a solid major league pitcher. As I said, given his age, I don't really think that's going to happen, but the dollars that we're having to devote to bringing on Mr. Miller don't really scare me at all. And with that, we'll get moving on the month of June. Kind of a odd month for us. We've had a lot of games within our division over these first couple months of the season. We're going to have 4 games in Los Angeles against the Dodgers at the end of the month, but other than that, it's all against fellow National League teams, or in the case of the Houston Astros, a former National League team, until we get to the Athletics at the end of the month. And the start of this month of June not going very well for us. We were swept by the mighty Braves in 4 straight games at home. Took only 1 out of 3 against the Cubs. Finishing up the homestand with a series against the Nationals. We did win the first game there, and hopefully we can at least win 1 more to take this series. Did just activate last year's All-Star Angel Chivili off of the injured list. We sent Mr. Halverson, who was a pretty good reliever for us last year, but has been pretty disastrous with an ERA close into the 7s this year for us, to the minor leagues. Still a guy with options, so continuing to mix and match in the back end of this bullpen, but decided that since Braden Nett is potentially a more important part of our future than Mr. Halverson, we'll let him continue to learn on the job at the major league level. And we did end up at least salvaging that series with the Nationals, although we lost the last game when we were looking for a sweep. We also did get Bobby Miller signed to that contract today. As I said, I don't think this is ultimately going to be a huge difference maker for us, but we do save a little bit of money through his arbitration years, and then we've got team options on the final years of this contract. So I think it's likely a fine contract for us. I think the probability of it turning into a disastrous contract are pretty low, given that the numbers aren't that high and we do have team options at the end. But given that he is already 27 years old and he's nowhere near fully developed, I do think the chances of this becoming a good to great contract for us are also pretty low, but they're not zero, so might as well roll the dice and see if perhaps we can end up getting a guy on the books for a amount that really works out well for us. And I think in the case of Miller, as I said, he's a 27-year-old who was available in the Rule 5 draft 6 months ago, and he's just guaranteed himself many millions of dollars. So seems like a decent deal for both of us. Hopefully it works out as a great deal for us, and Miller ends up being a little disappointed, but don't know that that will happen. And we've been playing a bit more respectably. We won 2 out of 3 in Atlanta on the road and then swept Milwaukee on the road. Unfortunately, only 1 out of 4 in Washington, but now we're back home for a couple against Houston and then on the road at the Dodgers and the A's before we get to the end of this month. 33 and 41, kind of playing this month, similar pace to the way we've played all year. Hopefully we can ultimately salvage another 500 or winning month, but we're going to have to do pretty well over these last 8 games to get there. And those of you who have followed my series over the years know that I like to tend to invest pretty heavily in scouting and player development and coaching and making sure I have good scouts. And I think we are getting there with this team, but just wanted to point out one thing, and this will be a repeat public service announcement for those of you who have followed me over the years. But I do think that if you can have a good-sized investment in scouting, which we do this year with $22.5 million, a good-sized allocation to international scouting, which we do with 36% of our budget going there, and a scout who is highly regarded in terms of scouting amateurs, which we do in Michael Hill, who is excellent with amateurs, and more importantly, for the point I'm bringing up here, I said amateurs, but I meant international, excellent with international prospects as well. He can definitely help jumpstart the lower levels of your organization with some better scouting finds. We talked about our IAFA signing in Francisco Santos, who's the highest end prospect we have in the international complex. But in recent months, he's discovered Bobby Flores back at the end of April, who looks like a potentially interesting bat for a shortstop. Don't know if he's a natural shortstop or not. Ultimately, maybe more of a second baseman, but we'll see if we can improve his defense over the years. Extreme development risk, but still, for a guy that we just randomly found, Flores is definitely interesting. And more recently, similar thing just a couple of weeks ago with Luis Cacadino, another infielder, looks like a potentially really interesting contact hitter with some positive personality traits, most relevant that high work ethic. So it's all just a roll of the dice, but all else being equal, the more money you have in scouting, the more money you devote to international scouting, and the better of a scout you have with international players. Some portion of those random findings that you get will end up being a bit higher end. You can see we've got plenty of very low-end international findings that our scout has discovered for us as well. And unfortunately, apparently got banged up in the last game or a couple games ago because we haven't even played against Houston yet. And Eggy Rosario headed to the IL for 5 weeks with a fractured rib. He's hitting just .225, 5 homers and 21 ribbies for us and 253 at-bats. So a pretty ugly 62 WRC plus, and he's been slightly above replacement level. So putting him on the IL will likely give us an opportunity to give Mr. Cerna some more significant playing time, which really isn't the worst thing given how uninspiring Rosario's performance has been this year. And quite honestly, since we brought him over, I thought we might have found lightning in a bottle in that trade with the Padres, but turns out that perhaps it was a little bit more fool's gold. And we brought up Cole Carrig, and Cole Carrig and Jared Cerna are both going to get the opportunity to play some third base for us with Eggy Rosario going on the IL. So see what those two guys can do with a little bit more playing time, a couple of 24-year-olds, so definitely want to continue to see what we may have or not have with those two youngsters. And we've had a really good week since we last checked in. One of the games with Houston was rained out, but we won that series 1-0, and then had a shocking 4-game sweep of the Dodgers in Los Angeles. So that guarantees that we will end up with a second consecutive month with a winning record. So we're making progress towards being a borderline respectable team here. Now, given that a lot of that progress has been driven by the pitchers we brought on board, largely on one-year contracts with some veterans, still don't know how sustainable it ultimately is until we get this minor league system with better prospects, older prospects that are closer to helping us in the major leagues. But it seems like we're at least not going in a negative direction with the Rockies at this point, which means we're making some progress. And we ended up splitting the final 2 games of the month with the A's on the road. But taking a look at our team statistics, 15 wins for a second consecutive month. Certainly don't think that we're a ultimately 15 win a month kind of team, but we'll take them while we're getting them. At 39-42, we are 2 games above Pythagorean expectations. 12th in the National League in runs scored, 11th in OPS, 14th in on-base percentage, which is what our owner cares about, and we're not making a lot of progress there. 8th, middle of the pack in the league in runs allowed, and again, pitching half our games in Coors Field. If we are a middle of the pack team in runs allowed, I think we're doing a decent job with our pitching staff. But as we talked about, it's not, unfortunately, a pitching staff that's built to be similar to the way it looks today 2, 3, 4 years from now. So we still have a lot of work to do to actually, hopefully, build something a little more sustainable with our rotation and our bullpen. Most importantly, driven by that sweep that we just had of the Dodgers and the fact that they've lost another game since then. The National League West, only 5 games separating first from worst, and we're tied for third, 2.5 games behind. Do not, by any stretch of the imagination, think that we are a serious playoff contender this year, but it's certainly nice to at least be in the mix. As we sit here on July 1st, we're only 2 games out of a wild card somehow, which is kind of ridiculous. And we won our first game of July, the final game of the series in Oakland, to take that series. So as we sit here getting ready for our midseason review at 40-42, much better than I could have hoped. Ownership happy with that record, given that they just wanted us to not be awful. Not pleased that we haven't made any real progress on that on-base percentage goal. We have made some progress with attendance. A little bit of progress with the farm system, but still not having one of the better ones in baseball. Haven't done anything with our draft record. I mean, we only had 1 draft that was less than a year ago at this point, so I don't really know what he's expecting us to have done there. Team chemistry is fine. Fan engagement and fan interest is lacking. That is definitely an issue. It's regressed a little bit. I think we peaked at 64 in fan interest right when the season was getting underway, when we started that charity that Mr. Carrig had asked for, which cost us $16 million, which I believe is the same number as previous editions of OOTP. But unfortunately, we've regressed to 61 at this point, so we're losing about a point a month, maybe a little more than that, in terms of our fan interest, which isn't ideal, but we're better than where we were when we started this 13 plus months ago, so we're making slow but steady progress with these Rockies. And we'll start off our midseason roster review taking a look at our pitching staff. The bad news, Sandy Alcantara, who we picked up basically as a one-year rental to hopefully stabilize the pitching staff, is out with a pending shoulder injury. So that's very disappointing. He's been good for us, 7-5 with a 3.52 ERA, 2.5 WAR on the season. So he has been very good, particularly of late. I believe he had a 1.1 WAR as of the start of June. So I'm guessing he was very good in the month of June. Yeah, 4-1 with a 2.75 ERA and a 1.3 WAR for the month. So Alcantara pitching outstanding for us. Have to say, when you see a pending shoulder injury, that is definitely a concern. He would have been a guy that potentially we may have tried to trade to a contender as we got closer to the trade deadline. Although, to be honest, as we've talked about, we're a marginal contender right now, so I don't know if I really would have been as willing to dump him. But if he ends up having a significant injury, he'll have been successful for us in half a season. But we're certainly hoping for more than that. Alex Cobb, veteran free agent that we signed, 3-5 with a 3.13 ERA. So his extreme ground ball tendencies and ability to keep the ball in the ballpark have worked out pretty well for us. The 38-year-old, soon to be 39-year-old, is fragile physically. Given that he's been solid for us, we've looked into an extension, but he's looking for $14 million. And as much as we want to stabilize the rotation and keep it solid, $14 million for a 39-year-old who's fragile on a team that probably really is not a true contender seems like a luxury we probably can't afford for next year. Aaron Ashby, 2-8 record with a 5 ERA. He's a guy who hasn't been pitching as well recently. Only allowed 5 home runs, though. So, again, the extreme ground ball tendencies combined with some above-average ability to keep the ball in the park seem to be working out well for him. His FIP minus is 84, and he's actually put up a 1.8 WAR on the season. So, certainly could argue that he's gotten a bit unlucky with us. He's the only left-hander in our pen, in our rotation at this point, with the season-ending injury to Clayton Kershaw. So at this point, likely to keep him there. Ryan Feltner is still a mystery to me. We look at his ratings, below average stuff, below average movement, below average keeping the ball in the park, a pretty uninspiring arsenal. And I just think the guy should be getting torched in Colorado. He was 11-6 for us a year ago. This year, he's arguably even better. 8-4 with a 3.15 ERA and a 1.9 WAR at this point. So Feltner continues to do a solid job for us. And Bobby Miller has had a brilliant month for us. Maybe it's a good thing we signed him to that contract. 5-1 record now with a 2.53 ERA. The numbers have to be pretty impressive since he's gone into the rotation as a starter. 3-1 with a 1.76 earned run average now. So Miller doing a nice job for us as well. So we will have Miller back. We will have Ashby back. We likely can have Feltner back if we want, although his arbitration number is starting to get a little bit higher. So we likely have the 3, 4, and 5 starters from this rotation back next year. The big question is the money with Cobb and the money and the health with Alcantara. But we do have Braden Nett, Gabriel Hughes, Carson Palmquist. Palmquist and Hughes started games for us last year, and Nett ultimately will likely end up in the rotation. Could be as soon as tomorrow if Alcantara has a major injury. So We've got some younger guys competing for spots in the rotation, but with the likelihood that we'll be moving on from Cobb and Alcantara eventually, still have some spots that we're going to need to fill. Turning now to our bullpen, which kind of was our strength a year ago, but say that a bit tongue-in-cheek since we were a 58-win team a year ago, so we really didn't have any significant strengths. But Jaden Hill, who we brought up from the minors, has been actually pretty good for us. We had gone with a closer by committee approach early in the season, but a little over a month ago moved Hill into the closer role. He had been pitching well for us, and he has definitely excelled this year. 2.31 ERA over 35 innings pitched, 12 saves, and 12 shutdowns to just one meltdown. So he's a 26-year-old who we think can get a little better, probably similar to what we were talking about with Miller. Don't really think at his age that he's going to reach all of this untapped potential that we think he has. But he's done a solid job for us so far, as has Gregory Soto. Free agent signing gave us a more proven left-handed arm out of the pen, and he's put up a 3.71 ERA, striking out just over a batter per inning for us with a 1 WAR. Definitely has given us a professional left-handed arm out of the bullpen. Mentioned Carson Palmquist, who started 13 games for us a year ago. He began the season in AAA after we had added some veterans to the pitching staff this offseason. Came up when we've had some injuries. 3-1 record with a save, 2.35 ERA over 30 2/3 innings. So Palmquist certainly making an argument to remain part of this pitching staff for the foreseeable future. Ultimately, the lack of velocity, the extreme fly ball tendencies, and his inclination to give up home runs will probably result in him losing a roster spot, but realistically, we're probably a few years away from having enough talent that we've picked up through free agent trades or players that we've developed for that to be the case. Mentioned earlier in this episode, Chavili was our all-star a year ago who just returned from a stint on the IL. 4.67 ERA for him over 27 innings pitched, giving up 6 home runs, slightly below replacement level, so unlikely that he will become a second-time all-star this season. Anthony Molina, who had been our closer at times last year, moved into a middle relief role this year. 3.86 ERA over 16 innings pitched. He's had some injury issues as well, which is why he's played in only 13 games. Now we start getting to some of the guys that have struggled a bit more. Elvis Peguero is a guy that we traded for right before the trade deadline last year. Like the ground ball tendencies, like the velocity, like his ability to keep the ball in the park. But he has allowed 6 home runs in 32 innings pitched this year with a 5.34 ERA over his now close to full year with Colorado. He's basically been a replacement level type pitcher. While he's not making a ton of money, he's a guy that we can continue rolling out there. Eventually, he's a guy who probably prices himself out of our bullpen. Gabriel Hughes, similar to Palmquist, started 13 games for us a year ago. Began the year in Albuquerque, but with the injuries, we've brought him up to serve as a long reliever for us. 6.19 ERA over 16 innings pitched, and he's allowed 5 home runs. So another guy who's probably not a long-term part of our solution, but will continue to get action as we hopefully rebuild this pitching staff. And then the youngster, the prospect, Braden Nett, now has pitched 7 games for us, a 1-0 record, 5.84 ERA over 12 1/3 innings pitched, has given up 3 home runs. He's been below replacement level, and he's also walked 9 batters in those 12 1/3 innings. The control was the concern we had when we brought him on board, probably a big part of the reason why we were able to get him from the Padres. Still think he could be a useful arm for us. He's still listed as the number 57 prospect in baseball. That seems a little bit ambitious, given that he's 24 years old, the way his ratings look and the way he's performed for us this year. But beggars can't be choosers, and it's, as I said, very conceivable that we decide to slot Net into the rotation if that injury to Alcantara ends up being something more serious. We'll turn our attention now to mid-season review of the position players in the roster. Hunter Goodman listed as our starting catcher, although he's really more of a DH. 13 homers and 35 ribbies in 302 at-bats, but he's in a cold slump now. The batting average has fallen to 228 and just a 77 WRC plus, a little more than half a win below replacement for us this year. So after he put up a 4 WAR a year ago and won the Silver Slugger at catcher, it's definitely been a disappointing season offensively for Mr. Goodman. The starting catcher, given his good defense, is Drew Romo, and he's having a nice year for us, hitting 294 in 204 at-bats, close to a league average offensive player, and he's put up a 1.5 WAR for us, largely driven by his defense. Also has that captain personality and a good influence in the locker room with that high leadership and work ethic. First baseman, Vinny Pasquantino, 249 average, 8 homers and 27 ribbies and 209 at-bats, so not nearly as successful this season as he was in the half season after we picked him up from Kansas City last year. Just a 93 WRC plus and slightly below replacement level, given that he is not Keith Hernandez or Don Mattingly at first base defensively, or unfortunately offensively at this point. Bo Bichette, who has become our second baseman, has actually been hitting a bit better of late. He's got the batting average up to 274, 8 homers and 39 ribbies. So an 89 WRC plus, barely above replacement level, but part of that has driven by the fact that we've been teaching him and having him learn how to play second base at the major league level. But for a guy making $18 million, certainly would still expect and hope for more than 1/10 of a win above replacement as we get to the midpoint of the season. Taking a look at his batting splits, though, a slow start in April, hit just 200, 280 average in May, and he hit 314 in June, so he has been progressively getting better for us. Fielding stats at second base, below average in terms of his zone rating and defensive efficiency while he's been learning that position. Do think that hopefully his fielding there will be better over the second half of the year. Bichette is a guy that I've brought on board many times over the years as a free agent in OOTP, and it always seems that he's never, at least for me, as good in OOTP as I think he should be in real life. Definitely marginal this year. Trying to focus on the positive. He's been hitting better and better each month, and he now should be pretty much fully developed and ready to go at second base. So my hope is that ultimately he has a much stronger second half of the season than his first half with us. We've talked about Jared Cerna already a couple times in this episode. Has the batting average up to 246 in 118 at-bats, but a 62 WRC plus, still below replacement level. Likely will, at this point, feel like we're pot committed to keeping him on the team for this year and ultimately getting his rights. He does have option years left, so we will be able to potentially have him in AAA next year if we look to continue to try to develop the likes of him and Carrig to potentially eventually be a utility infielder or maybe more for us down the line. Carrig was doing really well, hitting 328 in AAA Albuquerque. We brought him up when we had the injury that we talked about a while back to Eggy Rosario, and he has been raking since he came up. A 394 average and 33 at-bats, driven in 6 runs, 154 WRC plus. So Carrig definitely making the case that he should stay up with us when Rosario comes back. Last, but hopefully not least, shortstop Ezekiel Tovar. 265 batting average, doesn't draw a ton of walks, even though we did have some success in the development lab with him in his plate discipline this past offseason. The on-base percentage barely above 300, but he does have 25 doubles, 2 triples, and 12 home runs, so that above average home run power and then that exceptional gap power with good speed have really played well this year. Ultimately, he's put up a 106 WRC plus and a 2.7 WAR. Continues to make a strong case for a second Gold Glove award at shortstop with an 11.6 zone rating and 1.093 defensive efficiency as we sit here at the midway point of the season. Turning to our outfielders, another guy that somehow always seems to end up on my teams in the early years of these playthroughs is Michael Conforto. Signed him as a minor league free agent, and he ended up making the roster for us. Hitting 246, does have 10 homers and 28 ribbies in 183 at-bats. He's been a league average offensive player, almost a win above replacement for $740,000, the major league minimum. Certainly doing his job, but also certainly not really part of our long-term future. Speaking of unlikely to be a part of our long-term future, Luis Robert Jr. set to have a $20 million team option next year, which we will almost certainly be moving on from. He's also a guy that we have on the trade block if anyone's interested in his defense and speed. The reason I say if anyone's interested in his defense and speed, because the bat is not that great at this point. Hitting 218 with 9 home runs and 27 ribbies and 174 at-bats. Struck out 51 times, so he's got a 75 WRC plus, about half a win above replacement level, driven by the defense and the speed, where he does have 9 stolen bases. But we would certainly be willing to trade Mr. Robert Jr., given that we almost certainly will not be exercising that $20 million option next year. Miguel Vargas, another guy that we picked up from the White Sox, has been a complete disaster since we brought him over. Hitting 176 in 125 at-bats this year. Only positive thing we can say about him is he does have a good eye. He's drawn 27 walks, so the on-base percentage is .335. But a 76 WRC plus in the same neighborhood as Luis Robert Jr., but given that he is not nearly the same player defensively, he is slightly below replacement level. Guy who's set to be making about $3.3 million in arbitration next year, and he also has no option years left. Vargas is another guy who is on the trade block that we would happily move on from if anyone wants to give us anything worthwhile for him, which I am not anticipating. Center fielder Brenton Doyle, 264 average, 3 homers and 19 ribbies and 269 at-bats. Has stolen 11 bases for us, but the offense, 77 WRC plus. Starting to see a pretty common theme here with below average offensive production from many of our key outfielders. Does have a 1.2 WAR, driven by his good defense. He, at this point, has now won 3 consecutive Gold Glove awards in center field, and with a 8.2 zone rating, 1.056 defensive efficiency, probably will get some votes for a 4th consecutive Gold Glove this year. Right fielder Jordan Beck, 244 average in 135 at-bats. He is the star of this crew, other than Conforto, with an 80 WRC plus, but has ultimately been slightly below replacement level. The 25-year-old is a fan favorite, does have some positive personality traits, and is popular locally, but definitely looking like more of a 4th, 5th outfielder for us type going forward than someone that we'll build around. Speaking of guys that we hoped we might be building around, Austin Wells playing right field for us regularly against right-handed pitching, but he is also a guy who has caught 19 games for us. He's essentially our backup catcher behind Romo, and then we have Goodman catch if Wells is not ready. So like the defensive versatility, like the left-handed bat, the problem is the left-handed bat has been absolutely horrible this year. Wells is hitting just a $177 in 215 at-bats, 7 homers, 21 ribbies, struck out 61 times. So that adds up to a 38 WRC plus, and he's more than a win below replacement level, as he's still not even fully functional as a right fielder. So when I think about the position players overall, the outfield is definitely the weakest link. You can argue that the infield is respectable or better in most spots. Better, most likely being shortstop, where Tovar's hitting well this year and is a very talented fielder. We also have Eggy Rosario in the mix, and other guys down in AAA who I think can help us going forward as well. Catching position with Romo is the starter defensively is solid, and if he can hit anywhere close to the way he's hitting this year, he's a pretty valuable player. But the outfield is pretty barren as far as offensive production, and if your outfield is not really hitting and you're playing in a place like Coors, you're probably going to have trouble winning consistently. And at 40 and 42, although we're much better than we were a year ago, you definitely can't say that we've been winning consistently. So as we get closer to the trade deadline, we'll continue to look at some potential options. As I mentioned earlier, the fan interest has dipped to a 61, so regressing there a little bit, but still better than we were. We were 39, so we have made some progress there. The 2 goals for this season seems like we are on target to not suck completely with that record close to 500. But unfortunately, we continue to have the worst on-base percentage in the National League. So Mr. Monfort will not be happy about that. And with that, we're going to continue moving forward here in the month of July. Probably not going to make too many trades until after we get through the draft, but the draft is only a little over a week from now, so we'll see how we play over the next week as we continue to try to scout up the high school and college prospects and get ready for the draft. And also, we'll probably be getting some news on Mr. Alcantara and that shoulder injury in the near term. And it definitely could have been worse. Shoulder inflammation going to keep Alcantara out for 5 weeks, but it certainly could have been better. It could have been a less serious injury. And with that 5-week injury, the opportunity to potentially trade him before we get to the trade deadline is probably gone. So that's unfortunate. We will place him on the IL. And as I talked about, we're going to give Braden Nett a chance to start for us, see what the youngster, the 24-year-old, can do in the rotation for us. And obviously we'll also make a call down to AAA to bring another pitcher onto the Major League roster. And we'll bring Seth Halverson back up from AAA. He was not particularly good in Albuquerque, but you're generally going to see some pretty bloated statistics in those PCL parks. See what he can do. He had a 7.17 ERA over the first half of the year. Hard to imagine he can do worse going forward. And we only won 1 of 3 games at home against Cincinnati, back on the road, where we're going to have 3 in Houston, including a doubleheader to make up for that game that we had rained out earlier. Did get one positive piece of news. Vinny Pasquantino hit 500 last week with 3 home runs to win the National League Player of the Week. But at this point, with the first-year player draft coming up in just 5 days, our attention is certainly going to turn to preparing for that and getting ready to see if we can add some good talent into our organization with the 5th overall pick. And we've gone 3-2 since we last checked in, and now getting ready for the first-year player draft. We took the doubleheader in Houston and then lost the final game of that series and split the first 2 on the road at San Francisco. So as we sit here on Saturday, July 11th, 44-46 record has us 3rd in the NL West, 5 behind the Dodgers. We're still lurking in the wild card race, just a game and a half behind the Giants. I am not inclined, when I look at our overall statistics, to see the 11th team in the league in runs scored. Somehow 4th in runs allowed is shocking at this point, but I don't really think we're a true contender, so I'm probably inclined to be a bit of a seller if I can as we get closer to the trade deadline. But if there's opinions to the contrary, would love to hear them. Don't know that you're going to convince me we should be selling out and becoming buyers, but certainly anytime there's an opportunity to make the playoffs, it's an interesting thing to pursue, and it would certainly help us build up some credibility with ownership, although if we somehow snuck into the playoffs this year, he'd probably be expecting us to contend next season, which is probably a bit of an accelerated timeline given what this roster actually looks like. And as I mentioned, we've got the 5th pick in the draft. Before we start the draft, we'll take a look at the 5 players that are expected to come off the board first, and then we'll sim ahead to our 5th pick, find out who really came off the board, and take a look at who's available, at which point we'll end the episode and turn things over to the worldwide scouting department to the extent anyone wants to opine on what you think we should do with this 5th pick. Catcher Zion Rose expected to go 1st overall to the Cubs. Don't love him defensively as a catcher, but he does have the ability to play a more than competent corner outfield. Think that he's got above average home run power, decent speed. Honestly, for a number 1 overall pick, he doesn't blow me out of the water in terms of his skill set and his ceiling, but as some of you have commented on, and I agree with, it seems like these first few drafts in recent versions of OOTP are not necessarily the strongest. The Mets, who moved way up in the draft to be able to pick 2nd overall, expected to go after shortstop Jaken Lombard, 18-year-old out of Florida, committed to the U. Really like his defense, decent speed, and looks like he could have a more than competent major league bat. Pirates also expected to go with a shortstop, Alex Harrington. Love the defense, like the speed, and another guy who looks like he could have a more than competent bat. The 19-year-old out of San Diego is committed to Stanford. If he were to drop to us at 5th with that glove, I'd have a hard time saying no to him. Washington expected to go with center fielder Kevin Roberts. Really good defensively, gun of an arm, which you would expect for a guy who's a potential 2-way player, although given the lack of stuff as a pitcher, don't really think he's going to make it there, but good potential home run power and gap power for the 6'5" center fielder. And then we are projected to take 19-year-old high school pitcher Chandler Hart out of Allen, Texas. I think his stuff could be well above average with slightly above average movement and control if all works out. Only a potential 3-pitch arsenal, and a mediocre fastball is one of those 3 pitches. Doesn't look like he's ever going to get extremely high on the radar gun. I'd be pretty surprised if Chandler Hart is ultimately the direction we end up going with the 5th pick in the draft, even though that's what the experts think we are going to do. So let's get this party started. Going to go ahead and auto draft our pick and find out who the four guys who are off the board are. And not surprisingly, Alex Harrington, a guy that I really liked, is off the board. Grady Emerson, another shortstop, went number 1 overall. Looks competent defensively, good speed, decent looking bat. A lot of these shortstops are pretty similar. That's why I preferred Alex Harrington to the others, because similar speed, similar-ish bat, but he brought the best defense. Drew Burress went to the Pirates, really good-looking defensive outfielder whose bat looks like it could be competent at the major league level. And then, unfortunately, Brady Harris, another guy that I was very interested in, went 4th overall right before us. Really good-looking defensive outfielder who could have a little bit of pop in that bat. Looking for a lot of money and certainly some mixed personality traits, but he would have been a very strong contender for us. So arguably Harrington and Harris were two guys that were very near the top of my list, and unfortunately they are both off the board here for the 5th overall pick in the draft. So before we finish things off, we'll take a look at some of the higher end prospects, at least according to our scout. We've already talked about the college catcher Zion Rose. Don't think he's the direction we're going to go here with the 5th pick. And then we've already talked about the shortstop Jacob Lombard, who I think is potentially a more realistic option for us. I really like that infield range and error rating. I think he could be a pretty good defensive shortstop or second baseman. Decent speed and a bat that certainly looks competent at the major league level. 3 other highly regarded prospects, at least in terms of their potential, according to our scout. The right fielder, Lorenzo Laurel, looks like a solid defensive corner outfielder with potentially excellent home run power, pretty average at everything else. Does have high adaptability, pretty average-ish in terms of his speed as well, and the University of Florida commit, not looking for much money at all. Keon Johnson, another shortstop, not as good defensively as some of the other guys that we've talked about. Do like the personality with high work ethic, high leadership, high adaptability, high loyalty, although he is going to want to get paid. Bat looks usable at the major league level with a little bit of a pop in it and some decent speed for Keon Johnson. And the highest ceiling potential prospect, at least according to our scout, is center fielder Kevin Roberts Jr., another guy that we've already talked about, the potential two-way player with the really good defense in center field and a bat that looks pretty well balanced, potentially a little bit above average at everything. Don't know a lot about his personality, but think that Roberts will certainly be in the mix for our decision making as well. And given that he's so much more developed than some of the others, we'll talk about a couple of these college players. Caden Bogenpole, right fielder, potential two-way player. Mixed personality, but generally still positive with high work ethic, leadership, and adaptability. Average defensively, decent batting eye, but the bat doesn't look special. The thing with him is that you think he could be a potentially useful arm at the major league level if he's able to completely develop. Don't know that he's a guy I'd go 5th overall, but he's certainly further along than most of these guys, along with another college player, third baseman Colby Turner. Don't love him defensively, but certainly has some home run pop in his bat. And before we finish up, we'll take a look at 5 of the highest ceiling pitching prospects that are still out there, starting with Ethan Wheeler. I think the 18-year-old right-hander's stuff can be absolutely incredible. The movement pretty average. Do worry about the walks with him. could have a potential 4-pitch arsenal. Solid stamina, good at holding on runners, only going to be throwing in the low 90s, but I think that he could certainly be interesting. I think we already might have talked about him. Was he supposed to be one of the guys high in the draft? I might be losing it for some reason. I feel like I talked about him, but I don't know when I would have. Anyways, Liam Peterson, another starting pitching prospect, 21-year-old out of Florida. Like the personality with high loyalty, work ethic, baseball intelligence, and low financial ambition. College pitcher, decent stamina, decent at holding on runners. Potential 4-pitch arsenal. We think his stuff could be above average. Movement and control both in the average-ish range. Going to reach the mid-90s on the radar gun. Do worry a little bit that he could give up some home runs, so not necessarily ideal for Colorado, but certainly much further along than many of the other pitchers that we'll be talking about. Chandler Hart, 19-year-old, we think has a pretty high ceiling. Potential 3-pitch arsenal for him. Going to be throwing in the low 90s. I think he's fine as a prospect, but I don't think the lefty is the way we're going to go. Obviously, we talked about him a little bit earlier. Gabe Gackle, a 21-year-old out of Arkansas, is probably the most developed college pitcher. Not too far off major league quality right now in terms of his stuff, movement, and control. He is almost 22 years old, so certainly more experienced. Potential 3-pitch arsenal, fastball, curve, and change. All of those pitches are also pretty far along. Solid stamina, not great at holding on runners. Like the adaptability, does have low leadership and low loyalty. Throws in the mid-90s, but certainly another guy more similar to Peterson, who's fairly far along in terms of his development and might be able to help sooner rather than later. The top potential guy, at least according to our scout, of anyone that's left, not just the pitchers, is C.J. Sampson, potential 2-way player, potential 4-pitch arsenal, although the fastball is never going to be imposing. I think he's going to struggle to top 90 on the radar gun. Decent stamina, decent at holding on runners. Going to really rely on developing some of those off pitches to reach his full potential. But his full potential is well above average stuff, well above average control, and average movement. And he also does bring potentially into the mix a bat that we think could have above average contact, kind of average-ish in gap power, home run power, and eye, but looks like he could be a competent defensive player at a number of different positions. Not the greatest speed in the world, but kind of a 2-for-1 prospect here, a decent hitting prospect with a better than decent glove in a number of positions, and interesting pitching prospect as well for C.J. Sampson. So going to have some interesting decisions that we're going to need to make here. Our scout, Roberts Jr. and Sampson are his favorites. He also notes Jacob Lombard and Zion Rose, who were supposed to go with the first 2 picks in the draft, as players that he is particularly interested in. We do not have a 3rd-round pick this year. Lost that for the signing of Bo Bichette. So we'll be picking 5th overall in this first round, and then after that, by virtue of having the worst record in baseball last year, we'll be picking 1st overall in the subsequent rounds when we do have picks. But it's going to be a bit of a long wait for us. We've got the 5th pick now, and although we are going to be picking at the top of the 2nd round, 16 compensatory 1st-round picks in this year's draft, including 3 of them to the Orioles. So although we'll be picking 5th overall, we won't be back on the clock until 48th overall, which will be the 1st pick in the 2nd round. So odds are most of these guys that we have been talking about will not be available for us when we are back on the clock. So I will be spending some time offline investigating some potential options. If you happen to be watching this episode on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, would appreciate any thoughts on which direction you think we should go in the draft. Don't know whether the next episode will be Sunday night or perhaps waiting until Monday to do it. So sometime for the Worldwide Scouting Department to opine. We'll see how the rest of the day goes for me in real life. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.